Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Shocking revelations in a New York Times investigative story about civil rights icon Cesar Chavez are rippling through the labor movement today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jacob Ayer in for Maya Trabolsi. The Times story documents what it says are numerous instances of Chavez sexually abusing women and girls. KPBS reporter John Carroll looks at Chavez's legacy here in San Diego.
At an event this morning in San Lorenzo, California, Governor Newsom was asked about the revelations about Cesar Chavez.
So we're just going to have to reflect on all of that and, reflect on a farm workers movement and a labor movement that was much bigger than one man.
The governor spoke of the inspiration Chavez has been in his life, and he's far from alone. Statements poured in today from leaders of the labor movement and political leaders, all with a similar message, that the actions of one man should not define the larger movement he helped create. Perhaps the person who was at Chavez's side creating that movement more than anyone else was the now 95-year-old Dolores Huerta. She issued a statement that says in part that she'd kept a secret because to have revealed it would have hurt the farm worker movement she'd spent her life fighting for. Then she talked about the abuse she suffered at the hands of Chavez, saying initially she was pressured into having sex with him, someone she admired, and that the second time she was raped. Huerta says Chavez's actions don't diminish the improvements won for workers, and that it's more important now than ever to continue advocacy and activism. There's another aspect of the fallout that is now just starting. Streets, not just in San Diego but across the nation, bear Chavez's name. Schools do too. The governor said today some 36 in California are named after him. There are the murals in places like Chicano Park and statues.
In 1973 probably is when I got to know Cesar.
Perhaps this sudden news is most disturbing to people who knew and worked with Chavez, including Linda and Carlos Leggeret. The San Diegans were at his side as he worked on labor issues here. They're featured in the documentary that is aired on KPBS called Linda and Carlos, A Chicano Love Story. They founded the Cesar Chavez Service Clubs of San Diego.
I loved and respected Cesar Chavez so much. While we were there, just as a person.
As the hurt settles in for people like the Leggerets, decisions will now have to be made here and across the state and the country.
This is a world we're living in, and we're for justice, we're for the truth, we're for transparency. We want to have the backs of our victims, but it's a sensitive moment.
Cesar Chavez died in April of 1993. The memories people who admired him have had for the last nearly 33 years now changed forever in a painful way. John Carroll, KPBS News.
We're a few days away from spring, but the summer-like swelter is already happening. KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen takes a look at how people are escaping the heat and the signs to watch for heat-related injuries.
With the sun bearing down and the heat not letting up anytime soon, staying indoors in an air-conditioned room is a given.
If you don't have air conditioning, there's always pools.
There are several public pools throughout the city that are currently open, including this one in City Heights. Or you could go to a cool zone like this one in San Carlos. There are 10 in the city of San Diego. Dia Como was here for an exercise class. She's been keeping cool by opening her windows at night.
And that cools everything down. Close the windows first thing in the morning, and then it usually stays pretty cool till the afternoon.
If it gets too hot, Como will go to the movies or shop at grocery stores for the AC.
You need to constantly be drinking cold drinks, cold water, stuff with electrolytes.
Andrew Eads is an emergency room doctor at Sharp Memorial Hospital. He says there's an increased chance of heat-related injuries during a prolonged heat wave.
And as these heat waves sort of drag on for several days, that a lot of people are sleeping in places that don't have air conditioning. They're never really getting kind of a true recovery in a cool place. And so, that heat-related injury builds up over days.
The National Weather Service has issued a heat advisory until Friday, and experts say you shouldn't do strenuous outdoors activity in the middle of the day.
I think it's hard for people to recognize the symptoms themselves, and that's why it's important for us to check on our elderly family members and friends and make sure that they're doing okay.
Eads says if they look like they're not tolerating the heat well, that's when you should take them to the emergency room.
If I'm outside, I'm under the trees or.
Or come to a place like this.
Yes, please.
Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
The heat wave continues. Relief can be experienced only at night and then during the day along the immediate coastline and up in the high ground. It's a hot one. But tonight, down to 54, Mount Laguna 61, Borrego Springs, and we're in the 50s. Escondido, Ramona 53s there, 59 into San Diego. But we really bump. Temperatures on the rise in a big way. Monthly record highs in jeopardy. Some areas have broken monthly record highs, and the heat's going to be persistent. Dangerous heat in the lower deserts. Even later into next week, the heat holds. We'll have your full forecast.
The mayor of El Cajon is asking for an explanation on the state's immigration sanctuary policies. In a letter to Attorney General Rob Bonta, Bill Wells suggests the policies do not align with federal law. Mayor Wells takes issue with the state law restricting data sharing among law enforcement, along with what he calls the state's suite of sanctuary policies. El Cajon has been one of the few local cities that have pushed back on sanctuary protections. Mayor Wells is requesting a response from the state in writing by April 22nd. Today in Washington, President Trump's nominee to lead the Department of Homeland Security faced his first confirmation hearing. Immigration enforcement, especially ICE, was a focus. Brian Abel wraps up today's hearing on Capitol Hill.
Do you think fighting as a resolution for political differences is a good example for the men and women of ICE and Border Patrol?
In the hot seat on Capitol Hill, Senator Mark Wayne Mullen testifying during his confirmation hearing to lead the Department of Homeland Security. A tense start as Senator Rand Paul questioned Mullen over his temperament.
Explain to the American public why they should trust a man with anger issues to set the proper example for ICE and Border Patrol agents.
Let me earn your respect. Let me earn the job. I won't fail you. I won't back down from a challenge. And I'll also admit when I'm wrong.
Mullen's confirmation process for DHS Secretary comes after the ouster of Kristi Noem, whose tenure at the top of the department ended in a partial government shutdown, now in its second month, over the agency's immigration enforcement actions. Democrats voting to withhold funding while demanding significant reforms following the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy by federal agents in Minneapolis.
In the past 14 months, Secretary Noem has fundamentally broken the American people's trust in the Department of Homeland Security. If confirmed to lead the department, how will you be different from Secretary Noem?
My management style is empowering people. And as I said in my opening statement, I want to protect the homeland. I want to bring peace of mind. And I want to bring confidence back to the agency.
Mullen will next face a full vote in the Senate if the committee approves his nomination. In Washington, Brian Abel, KPBS News.
If confirmed as Homeland Security Secretary, Mullen would also lead TSA. That's the agency that handles security at America's airports, who have gone without pay for weeks. As Karen Kafer reports, the stalemate in Congress is affecting the travel experience.
Spring break volume collides with a congressional impasse, with airline passengers stalled in the middle.
Even if you're going to an airport that hasn't had issues with these staffing shortages, you just don't know when it can happen.
TSA officers have worked without pay since February 14th, when Department of Homeland Security funding lapsed amid a stalemate over federal immigration reform. TSA officials say call-outs and resignations are mounting.
Our TSA officers, as long as they don't get paid, they're going to continue to call out. They can't afford to come in. and they're going to quit altogether, and that's a serious concern.
The Department of Transportation says passengers are entitled to refunds only for a canceled flight, a schedule change, or a significant delay, or on a fully refundable ticket that isn't used, not a TSA backup. But Meghna Maharishi, airline reporter at travel news site Skift, recommends travelers stay in close touch with their airline. Some are offering more rebooking flexibility.
That is a circumstance that is also outside of your control, and it is outside of the airline's control too.
Off-peak travel may also ease wait times.
I definitely say either like early morning or very late at night. Those are probably going to be the two best times, just because there probably won't be as many flights taking off, and there probably won't be as many passengers on those flights, so you probably won't be dealing with very long security lines.
Passengers can also consider TSA pre-check for future travel. Maharishi says some travel credit cards will reimburse consumers for the cost. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, intelligence officials are questioned by U.S. lawmakers about the war with Iran. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The Santee School District Board became the latest to give itself a raise last night. The board voted to increase its monthly stipend from $240 a month to $500 a month for the rest of the school year. That amount will go up to $750 next school year and $1,000 the year after that. An update to state law is allowing school boards across San Diego County to give themselves similar pay increases. You can find our recent story on that topic from KPBS education reporter Katie Anastas at kpbs.org. Democracy in the United States is struggling, according to a new international report. The Varieties of Democracies Institute is a Sweden-based research firm that analyzes countries and assigns a liberal democracy index score. The institute says the U.S. is among dozens of nations that are autocratizing. Only 12 nations were marked as becoming more democratic. Among the issues for the U.S. include the suppression of media and dissenting voices, along with a rapid concentration of presidential power. The San Diego City Council passed a controversial resolution defining anti-Semitism. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson says that followed 4 hours of heated public comment and a lone no vote by a Jewish council member.
Anti-Semitism has been rising in San Diego and across the country. That's according to Jewish organizations and hundreds of speakers at Tuesday's San Diego City Council meeting. Liat Cohen-Reese directs a local anti-Semitism task force. She says defining it is the city's first step to better fight it.
Well, we need language. In order to understand what something is, we need a definition. We need the language.
Nearly everyone who spoke agreed anti-Semitism needs to be combated. They disagreed on how to define it. The city adopted the definition of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, or IRA. It's been adopted by dozens of countries and cities across the U.S., including Los Angeles, Chula Vista, and El Cajon. It says anti-Semitism is, quote, a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred. It includes 11 examples. 7 of them involve the state of Israel. Critics say the language has been used to silence criticism of Israel and support for Palestinians. One of those critics is Jewish council member Sean Elo Rivera. He says people must be allowed to both love Jewish people and speak freely against actions by the Israeli government.
A definition that cannot hold both of these things at once is not a tool for fighting anti-Semitism. Is a tool for silencing people who care about everyone.
He urged the council to consider other definitions, but he was outvoted 8-1. For more on this debate and to read the full definition, visit kpbs.org. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
Tuesday's episode of KPBS Midday Edition, hosted by Andrew Bowen, features an in-depth conversation on this topic. You can find Midday Edition wherever you get your podcasts. It also airs live weekdays at noon on KPBS FM. Nowruz, the Persian New Year holiday that celebrates spring, begins Friday. KPBS arts reporter Julia Dixon-Evans tells us how a local mother-daughter author and illustrator duo recently released a new children's book exploring the tradition through young eyes.
Zohra Garamani grew up in Iran but fled the country in the 1970s to pursue her education. Her daughter, Susie, has never visited Iran. But as a family, they kept the Nowruz tradition alive.
I grew up with Nowruz. I
thought that was the main holiday for the entire world.
Well, when I was really young, it just meant a day out of school and wearing a brand new outfit and being with my family. But as I get older, it really feels like the darkness is fading away of winter, and it really is an opportunity for things to sort of turn around.
In Celebrate Nowruz, the main character, Ariana, is tasked with setting up the Nowruz Haftzin, a unique spread of 7 symbolic foods. With Ariana, readers prepare, shop for, and bake each traditional element, baklava, garlic, apples, and more, in both Farsi and English.
Then start thinking of the 7 things in Mom's Haftzin. I only remember seeb, apple, seer, garlic, and sabze.
Susie's illustrations are vivid, relatable, and engaging, right down to a peekaboo cat hidden throughout the book. Zora and Susie wanted to share the holiday with a younger generation and create a book they never had, about a holiday they say transcends borders and time.
And hopefully this is that way, because it speaks of a holiday that is 3,000 years old, and yet every year is brand new.
With war in Iran this year, Nowruz feels different for the Gahremanis and their family.
What matters this Nowruz is how it affects our children. And also Nowruz has survived so many wars, and hopefully it will survive forever.
Julia Dixon-Evans, KPBS News.
An impressive March heat wave is not just breaking daily records, but in many areas, not necessarily in San Diego, but in some other nearby spots like Santa Ana and Idlewild, monthly record highs are being broken in several locations just a little bit inland. There are hints of limited relief early next week. Still going to be hot on March standards. Very, very warm, though. It's steamy out there. Record-breaking heat continues across much of the Southwest. There are areas breaking monthly record highs, hottest March day in some spots, and dangerous heat in the lower deserts. The risk of cold water shock still present. I know it's warm, but that water is still cold, and that could be a jarring issue. Here you can see we're dealing with heat advisories, I should say. Heat advisories across the area in the coastal areas of Orange and San Diego counties, and even most inland communities. You get into the deserts, that's where you find extreme or excessive heat warnings. So extreme heat warnings kind of replacing the old excessive heat warning. It's hot out there, just broiling heat. Tonight, though, we find some relief. 59, mainly clear skies, and relentless heat holds for Thursday. We got the red on the map here. It's hot, very hot, dry. And by the numbers, we're going to be around 96 in El Cajon, Ramona 96, Escondido 94. Borrego Springs 104. Meanwhile, we'll be in the low 80s right along the coastline. So very hot. Records falling. Monthly records being broken in some parts of the inland areas. Sizzling in the deserts for Friday. Still just downright hot. Not a drop of rain. The record heat's going to be expanding into more of the plains even on Friday into Saturday, with temperatures inland 15 to 30 degrees above historical averages. And we're well above average along the coastline as well. The only relief to be found here on Saturday will be in the mountains and right along the immediate coastline. Record challenging warmth in many areas. And again, the big pattern really doesn't change a whole lot. Late March, the heat holds across most of the region. We'll get a little relief to the north. Later next week, we'll begin to feel a little more relief locally, and the cold air is going to be retreating. It's still a little nippy up there into New England, but a dry spell through the rest of this week as well. We're going to stay dry into next week, too. Limited or no precipitation anywhere in the Southwest. A drought expanding to our east, worsening drought conditions in parts of the Great Basin. So the coastal forecast, 81 Thursday, 80 Friday. The coast is a popular place, though, into the weekend, back into the 70s. That's your relief, hanging out near the coast. San Diego, you're in a better spot. Inland areas, we're staying in the 90s Thursday and Friday. Then we find some relief back into the 80s this weekend. The worst of this will be behind us by the time we get to the weekend. Into the mountains, 70s for Thursday and Friday, then back into the 60s Saturday and Sunday. Monday will be very warm. And in the deserts, we got the hot thermometer across the board here with the hottest weather, 104 on Thursday and Friday, and temperatures hedging down slightly, but still hot for March in the upper 90s Sunday and Monday. I'm AccuWeather meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
KPBS has reported extensively on the state's push to boost housing density. In San Diego, height limits have been an issue, but the same can't be said for Newport Beach. Michelle Geely tells us what a project that would transform the skyline and bring an end to a neighborhood landmark.
I'm actually terribly sad.
The curtains could soon be closing for good at Big Newport, the iconic movie theater near Fashion Island in Newport Beach.
I've been going to Big Newport ever since I was a kid, so I know that it's a really, nostalgic feeling for a lot of us out here.
This theater looks very vintage and retro. It's got some character and a piece of tradition that's going to be lost.
The City Planning Commission has unanimously approved a proposal to build a pair of 22-floor condominium towers on the property. Landowner Jim Edwards recently spoke at the meeting about selling and the opportunity to create a project that he says is something special.
The theater attendance has declined every year for the last 20 years. And of course, COVID decimated the business, which hasn't recovered since then.
Edwards told commissioners that the theater could close as early as this year. Planned in its place are 150 high-end condominiums, 2 swimming pools, a cafe, and valet parking. Officials say the project is in line with Newport Beach's general plan and desire to fulfill a state mandate to add thousands of additional housing units citywide.
So it implements the city's housing element overlay, as well as contributes to the ultimate vision of Newport Center and making it more of an urban, pedestrian, friendly environment.
Since the proposal was approved March 5th, 2 appeals have come in, which will be heard by the City Council next month. The developer of the proposed luxury tower says the related California team has taken tremendous care working with the City of Newport Beach and world-class architects to ensure our project complements and aligns with the vision and general plan for Newport Center.
That was Michelle Geely reporting. So much of San Diego has changed with the passage of time. Many things that used to be landmarks are now gone, but not forgotten. As Ken Kramer shows us, if you want to know the history of a community or neighborhood, just ask the people who grew up there.
The old bowling alley, hamburger stand.
Lifeguard station.
Lifeguard station was right here.
They had 2 hamburger stands here.
Say hello to Terry Curran and Phil Prather, a couple of guys who wrote the book on Mission Beach. I mean, they go back to the days when this was a little community that had its own identity. Just a big neighborhood, really, is what it was.
This is where we grew up. This is where all the kids in San Diego came when they came to the beach.
These are photographs from longtime Mission Beach residents and from the San Diego History Center's archives. Take a look. It was San Diego, sure, but it was Mission Beach, to be specific. And Terry says as a kid, he just loved living here.
Well, life was so simple. In the summertime, I'd leave home at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't come home till dark.
Go way back from the very beginning, it seemed like there was a particular quality to this place, something special, something unique. By the late 30s and 40s here, Phil and Terry were calling it home, and part of what they do is recall and document how it was.
You remember the Safeway was right here, and they'd stack watermelons in the summer, and somehow or another, the kids would walk by and kick a watermelon, and it would roll out onto the sidewalk, and somebody else would be right there to scoop it up.
And out here buried under the asphalt is the old trolley car tracks.
Now you get to talking with these guys about Mission Beach, and you quickly learn how at times and in spots this place has flooded, of course. Rains, high tides, and one particularly bad storm in the 1920s when there was just a wooden boardwalk. The surf tore up houses along the beach. It was a mess. And out of that came this, the seawall that everybody knows today. Well, in trying to learn more about the seawall, Phil and Terry came across a piece of home movie film shot by Dr. and Mrs. Raymond Penwarden in 1927 and 28. And what this is the Mission Beach seawall being built.
They built the piles for the retaining wall. They mixed the concrete, cut all the steel.
It was all designed by a man named Burl Phelps back in 1927 and took months, but finally it started looking like the wall and oceanfront walk we know today. But there are some things you might not know
This wall goes all the way down to bedrock. And on the ocean side, he built a lip on here so the surf would come in, hit the wall, and bounce back toward the ocean.
Only thing is, it's a public beach, and the sand is generally higher than that lip, so you don't see it. What you do see, every once in a while, is some pretty amazing pictures of surf splashing against that wall.
Sometimes the surf will bounce up 20, 30 feet and then come crashing down onto the walkway and taking care of fences and sometimes houses on the shore.
Then there was this, one of the strangest things beach residents had ever seen. It's foam, just foam.
I do recall, it was probably in 1939, after the big storm, where the wind blew the foam off of the ocean and covered the entire beach, where we could go down the steps into this foam, and it was over our heads, and we would walk through this, and it was one of those things kids love to do.
So much more. There was the dredging of what would become the Mission Bay we know today, a mammoth project that fascinated kids like them who grew up here, lived here off and on their whole lives, still love it, still remember so many of the little things.
Right here on the next corner was a drugstore with a soda fountain. Whatever you needed, it was here.
And remember I said they wrote the book? They really did. The book on Mission Beach from Terry Curran and Phil Prather, who certainly do know and recall a lot about San Diego.
Ken Kramer has a half hour of stories every week about San Diego. You can see them Thursday nights at 8 o'clock here on KPBS. Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. The U.S. has agreed to release more than 150 million barrels of oil from its Strategic Petroleum Reserve. NPR's Morning Edition digs into what that means for the country's stockpile. And KPBS Midday Edition is rounding up all the best arts and culture events around town for the weekend preview. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jacob Ayer. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.